Hello everybody, this is Terrell from TerrellO3.com, and today is Monday, January 14th, 2013. And well, I was going to do this in about a month, but for reasons that will be understood later, then I've gone ahead and done this now. This is a press release concerning the event that is going to take place on April the 1st, April the 2nd, 2013. This is very similar to Guerrero last year, to Fukushima the year before, and Chile the year before that. This is on the 188-day cycle. April the 2nd being the next day on the 188-day cycle. So I'm going to read at least some of this to you, what's going on. This will be about a 15-minute update. I'll cover as much as I can. For immediate release, Monday, January 14th, 2013. And let's see, my contact information and stuff. April 2nd, 2013, Earth will orbit through a gravity trough connecting the Sun and an inbound black dwarf star from the Leo constellation to generate a Pacific Ocean / Ring of Fire event that will be preceded by 24 precursor earthquakes of 4 to 6 magnitude, like Chile on February 27, 2010, like Japan on March 11, 2011, and Guerrero last year on March 20, 2012. Our researchers have discovered a pattern of seismicity going back to 1965 that has transitioned into large magnitude events, including Earth axis shifts on regular 188-day cycle. The most recent events include what was mentioned above, Chile, and the backside alignment event was September 4th, 2010. That was Christchurch in New Zealand. September 15th, 2011. You notice how you add 11 days to that, and you get September 15th for the Fiji event, 2011. And then September 26, 2012, that was the Aleutian event. That was a 7.9 that they downgraded down into the 6s. The next timeline event is expected to take place, according to our calculations, on April the 2nd, 2013, when Earth will pass through the gravity trough connecting the gravity wells of the Sun and an inbound black star tracked at 0.024 degrees below the ecliptic plane under the hindfoot of the Leo constellation. That has actually migrated over towards Virgo a little more than I expected. I just looked at the data again. Saturn recently passed through the Leo constellation, developed the current superstorm now raging in the northern hemisphere, just like 30 years ago when the ring planet passed through the Leo constellation. The evidence indicates that Jupiter's liquefying core, Venus's slowing rotation, with Mars's and Uranus's increased seismicity are all perturbations associated with an inbound black dwarf star. Earth experienced the magnetopause reversal last year on March 12th to 13th, 2012, for between 23 and 28 hours from the bombardment by subatomic particle flows released from the Leo constellation, saying that the inbound dark star is in near proximity to the inner solar system. Our research teams anticipate that HAARP multi-frequency wave signatures will begin transmitting from Navy-maintained floating flotillas on March 29, 2013, about 72 hours prior to the expected event. The HAARP arrays will generate either a series of amplification waves to induce a 5-inch Earth axis shift with a 9-magnitude earthquake event, or generate a dampening field to spread out the gravity trough-produced energy wave to induce multiple 8-magnitude quake events at the epicenter location. The research teams also expect to see 24 4 to 6 magnitude earthquake swarm events at the April 2nd, 2013 Pacific Ocean event epicenter location. Everyone living in or around a seismic area should be warned to brace for one of the top 5 seismic events in recorded history on or about April 1st through the 2nd, 2013. That's the end of the press release. Now, the reason that I'm not as sure this year about the event April 2nd is the next day on the 180-day cycle, but last year I anticipated April 22nd, and the event happened about 40 hours early with the Guerrero event. And in Guerrero, they just started their exercise looking for an event, and it started 1 hour. My event happened 1 hour after. And if you remember, I was on the radio with Clive Lewis in front of 800,000 radio listeners because I was able to predict the 24 precursor quakes. That is going to happen again this year. It happened. This will be the 4th year in a row. It's pretty easy to predict that event because I see the pattern. So that's the press release. And remember that I'm still putting out the newsletters, Terrell's 2012.
Like Hi, this is One for the Record. I'm Diana. Today is April 2nd, 2013, and here are a quick news updates. I've been trying to upload 3 times now, and it just keeps processing. So we're going to try to go in the back door right now so I can get you your news. First of all, we're into the 188-day cycle of earthquakes, and so far, a couple of hours ago, it was posted at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the E&E News that northern Japan has had a magnitude 6.1 earthquake, and along with that are a bunch of magnitude 5 aftershocks. Also, in the Space Coast, Florida, off of the Geological Causeway, there was a major car pileup with injuries, and they closed the causeway for hours, and now it's just been reopened, and there were injuries, and a causeway is like a bridge for those who don't know what those are. Alrighty then. Also, I'm just going quickly off of memory. I am connecting, I'm attaching Dr. Bill Deagle's Friday NUTRIMEDICAL report, Earth Changes, with Ann Morrison on there. I didn't want you guys to miss out on that. Also, there is a nuclear plant in the U.S. still on emergency power. I reported on the name of it yesterday, and so if you need to look that up, where it was at. I'm just doing this as fast as I can because it's already 10:42 Eastern Standard Time, and I'm still attaching everything to this video, but I didn't want you guys to go without. There's a major storm in Texas, around the Austin, Texas area. Hail, thunder. So heads up on that. Severe weather in Texas. Also, Iceland has a lot of magnitude 5. It's like a swarm going on over there. Magnitude 5 earthquakes and a 4.2. Also, there was nothing really new on the watchers, and there's an H7N1 or something flu in China. Sorry if I mixed up the numbers. I'm not going into anything so you can get this. I'm just giving you a recap, but there is a flu outbreak. And what else? I'm going to attach this guy. I'm going to start it off with him since you're not going to be able to see me tonight unless it loads, and it's still on strangeness here. Let's see if I can show that to you for a second. Let's see. There it is. It's still processing. It's processing. You can't see anything. I tried to do it twice, and it won't. It's blocking me. It's censoring me. So we're on track on something. Also, maybe it's because April 29th. I got it off of George Norrie's Coast to Coast. April 29th is supposedly disclosure day for UFO ET disclosure. This month, they're going to let something out of the bag. The cat's going to be out of the bag. And maybe because it's we're actually, the Western world, the United States is basically the only one who hasn't disclosed, really, about the UFOs. So, alrighty then. Take care. It's 2 days down, 3 to go before the weekend. Let me see if I can go back to the picture here. There I am. 2 days down, 3 to go. Please be safe, especially if you're anywhere by an earthquake zone. I am attaching videos. Take care, and I'll see you on the flip side tomorrow. Be prepared for anything. I got your backs. Oh, just a quick note. When I was outside, the sky is very, very, very clear, just like it was before some of the major earthquakes, like the Fukushima earthquake. So heads up. Go outside and check the sky. Alright, see you tomorrow on the flip side.
Welcome back to hour number 3. Hour 3 on Course Fridays is our, this is a special weekend because it's Preparedness, Civil Defense, Martial Law, and Earth Changes Hour. And our special panel guest, John Moore, has his own show. And the Liberty Man is his website, thelibertyman.com, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Standard Time, Monday to Friday. Ann Morrison is our scientist, expert on space weather. It says in the Bible that a third of the sea creatures in the oceans die because of bitterness. That bitterness is coming from a place called Fukushima Daiichi in Sendai, Japan.
Right.
And people need to understand that the whole wave of radiation, it was presented last week in March 11th and 12th in New York City with Helen Caldecott, Arnie Gunderson, and other panel members. We have a link directly to the 2-day conference. You can actually watch the entire video if you want, because that link is already up on our site right now. And that has been moving gradually over the last 2 years toward North America. It's not just the fast currents, which move in only 2 or 3 days. This is a giant glob of fairly much deeper level of radiation below the Karoshi current, underneath it, that's been moving gradually over to North America. All of the oceans of the world now are salted with radiation from Sendai, because those currents have carried around the entire world. So the Atlantic Ocean, every ocean on Earth is now radioactive. And the problem is the atmosphere is too. If you're not taking which side of protection like Nutridyne, Nutritrala, other detox things, you're not filtering your water. And I'm adding, by the way, a whole host water filtration system that'll pull up the radioisotopes. I've just put it together with our pure water system. And this is excellent. It's going to be under $800 for a whole host system. Fantastic clearing of the pathogens and toxins and heavy metals before it even gets to your water filtration system to remove the last of the fluoride. You need this, because our world is getting poisoned to death, and people don't understand that bioaccumulation means 2, 3, 5 years from now, you're going to see not only many more miscarriages, many more cancers, many more dementias, many more heart attacks. In fact, the people after Chernobyl didn't die of cancer, didn't live long enough. They died of stroke and heart attacks in their 20s and 30s.
Well, we need to remind people, Dr. Bill, that there's not enough of what you're recommending people get for 5% of the adults in this country to get it. So if people wake up like you did with ammunition, if you wake up too late, you're going to be left out in the cold, aren't you?
Yeah, that's right. So you need to go to your website. There's some great supplies you have there, including your special Armed Forces Special Forces bicycle, which is this Venezuelan rat hemorrhagic fever virus. We have 3 other, the H7N3, Mexico, killing millions and millions of chickens. I talked to him, even though Alexander won't be on today. He talked about it. It's increasing like crazy. Millions and millions of chickens are dying in these factory farms in Mexico. If it leaps across to humans, it's going to be unbelievably lethal. The case fatality rate of the novel coronavirus out of the Hajj now is got a case fatality rate over 60%. The reemergent H5N1 in Asia has got a case fatality of over 72%. And any one of these 3 could emerge in the next few months, 6 months, to a super plague. And I believe it's going to happen. It parallel to the thing that happened in Cyprus, because the banks are about to go bust. And they're not going to go bust by chance. And by the way, they'll resurrect the system.
Thanks, Dr. Bill. I'm going to turn it over to you and Ann. I got to get going here.
Appreciate it. And by the way, banks will come back. But the noxious side effects is a lot of your wealth will be gone. They'll have a lot more control, and the money will be biometric. The side effect will be called the mark. Back in a moment with Ann Morrison. With Ann Morrison, and your calls are welcome in the rest of this hour. We have 800-259-5791. If you call in, if you're having any trouble calling in and getting a connection, call our orders line, 888-212-8871. It's again, 800-259-5791. And let's go through all your stories. You've got some crazy stories here. I think the most shocking of all is the 70% plus death rate of the sea lion pups. This is really scary stuff. It's something that I can tell you the population just isn't wise as to how bad this is. It's just over the top. So, Ann, are you still there? We may have lost Ann in our connection. I guess we'll have to reconnect with Ann. Okay. Okay. Some of the stories, the latest stories that we have, and we have Ann back. Ann, are you there? Ann, are you there? Well, let's talk about the mortality events that are occurring in Southern California, and the newborn sea lions may be dying, and this is a very major problem. It means it's also going to affect the human population, the animal population of other animals, not just in the oceans. But the bitterness that's right in the Bible, I believe, is already active. We're seeing the 1/3 of the waters of the entire world are in the Pacific Ocean, which means literally we're seeing the death of the Pacific. I'm changing the name, and I want it to catch on. I want it to be called, from now on, not the Pacific Ocean, which is a nice, peaceful ocean, which is, by the way, not very peaceful, because that's a great place to wade to surf. But I want to call it the Plutonium Sea. Do you like that new term?
Well, that might be more accurate.
Right, and by the way, if you're out there surfing,
we've got
your
a
body
huge
surfing
problem
is...
out there just off the southern coast of coast of Southern California. The NOAA, that's the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, looked into all the strandings of sea lion pups. That's the baby sea lions, and they have like a 70% fatality rate. In other words, they're dying, and they're starting to test for toxins or infectious agents. And I don't know which would be worse. Just to give you an example, in 2008 off of San Diego, there were 23 deaths, and this year, just the first quarter of this year, just through March 24th, there's 214. So you can see that's a factor of 8.
Right.
And that's just through the first quarter. Of course, that's probably when most of the sea lion pups are born. I don't know. But let's say that it's a year-round thing. You know, 4 times 214 is 800, and then you've got a factor of, you know, it's just a tremendous factor of 64. So it's just a tremendous number of sea lion pups that are dying. Then we can guess that it might be the plutonium in the ocean.
It's all the other isotopes, but I figure plutonium is something that catches people's minds. And rather than calling it an ocean anymore, let's call it the Plutonium Sea. So when you body surf, when you realize these buckyballs, which can carry up to, I think, 64 uranium atoms per buckyball, are floating across the water, when you realize that this is now contaminating the air, food, and water that goes and forms an aerosol hundreds of miles in, that when it aerosolizes, it can also be kicked up to the upper troposphere and be carried, which is why on January 6th of 2012, they detected radioactive plutonium in the Czech Republic. And they thought at first it might have been a Chernobyl-style reactor further west of them that might have lost some control of their containment and had a meltdown, but in fact it was coming from Fukushima Daiichi and the radioactive release. And we're seeing a big burp with spikes of radiation coming off there now. I'm seeing it spike for a matter of minutes up to the 70s and dropping back to the 40s, 2 times background. This is happening right now. So the overall level is okay. I take my nutraceuticals, I drink filtered water, but I tell people if you're not starting to take proactive action now at 2 years after, you're bioaccumulating. And you don't know when you're finally going to hit the level where a target tissue that's weak or an organ system or genetic ability to detox these they're also, by the way, heavy metals as well as radioisotopes, is going to finally break through. In some systems, it's going to break down your body, or if you're a pregnant woman, you're going to get a birth defect, a miscarriage, or other problems. This is like the Children of Men movie, and it really is playing out right now, and people won't listen. They think Dr. Deagle thinks he knows everything, and why the hell is he making a big deal out of this? The fact is, it is a big deal. It is the most catastrophic environmental event in human history. This is it.
Yeah, and some of them are radioactive heavy metals. In fact, they're talking about finding metastable 110 silver, which is a radioactive silver isotope, which has a half-life of about 2/3 of a year, in the Pacific, in the Plutonium Sea off of Japan.
Right.
And there's no, I mean, it's not naturally occurring. It's not like potassium-40. Potassium is naturally occurring, and a certain percentage of it is naturally 40, you know, is the radioactive isotope that is,
right.
What do I want to say, iodine.
Exactly.
131.
Yeah, I 131, exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So, but this is not, silver, the radioactive component never occurs in nature. So this has to be man-made. And they're finding it off of the shore from Fukushima.
I would call it satanically made because that's more appropriate, because man with at least a portion of a normal conscience would not do this unless you're energized by the dark side of the Sith lords and demonic transdimensional demonic entities. You wouldn't do this to the human race or the biosphere. This is what I don't want to call it man-made anymore. I'm going to call it satanically made, because normal human beings with common sense, decency, and a conscience, even if you're not a Christian, wouldn't do this. This is not the actions of a normal, consequential, sentient, rational being. This is evil.
Well, yeah, and they know that they had storage. They had put mixed waste into storage tanks at Hanford in Washington State, upriver on the Columbia, and then these things started emitting gases. Well, the tanks were sealed. These were 55-gallon tanks, and they were sealed, and so they started bulging. And the people were afraid to open them because they said, they were very clear about it. We don't know what radioactive isotopes are in there because we don't know what reactions took place. I mean, this is an unknown area. We don't know what happened over in Fukushima. We don't know how this silver 110 metastable was generated. I mean,
well, one of the problems is, you see, there's radiologically amplified chemical reactions. Most people don't realize the abiotic oil that's inside the Earth, which is a giant nuclear reactor, is a combination of catalytic conversion to make larger biomolecules and oil molecules, etc., hydrocarbons, catalyzed by nuclear isotopes over millions of years. Back in a moment.
A report by Linda Moulton Howe last night on the Coast Show. And she went over this as far as the examples of it occurring that have eyewitnesses pretty extensively, you know. The idea is that these actual sounds, which are not thunder, they sound more like artillery, large artillery, they're being originated inside the Earth because of stress and pressure, and that they're going up to the ionosphere, bouncing back down to the surface of the Earth, and that's when people actually hear the noises. One lady heard what sounded like breaking glass along with accompanying the explosion or immediately before the explosion. There have been sounds that sounds like trumpets actually blowing that seem to be coming from above, and there have also been humming sounds, and these have occurred over, you know, the last 3 or 4 months pretty extensively, and they seem to be increasing at times, then they'll go away for a bit as far as reports.
Let's look at the physics of what sound is, okay? So we'll look at the physics. First is a sound has to occur when you have the production of interaction between, let's say, thunder and lightning. When you have lightning that actually expands the air rapidly with the plasma, then as the air collapses, it creates a collapse sound, okay? So to have a sound, you have to have an expansion usually due to plasma or heating, and then a collapse, whether that occurs inside the Earth or in the air. So what I would suggest it is it indicates that there's a plasma discharge in the air, and that plasma discharge is causing the creation of sounds. Now that plasma may be discharging from the Earth. Remember now, when a lightning strike, the first, if you want to call leader, is not from the sky to the ground, but the ground to the sky. And that means the Earth is probably discharging plasma along fault lines, along tunnels, along caves, along geopathic stress zones in the Earth. And it means that there's some geopathic stress occurring on the Earth and the fault lines. And any ideas you have, because I want to continue, but I'd like to hear your ideas on what you think is happening here, because I'm pretty certain that we're seeing what I call the groaning of the Earth in a sense, the Earth changes that are coming. And I don't think people realize that the Earth changes are going to be nasty.
Well, you know, when the big earthquake struck over in India in 2004, you know, the 9.0 that caused the 50-foot tidal wave, which washed inland and killed all those people, 300,000 people.
Yeah, killed a couple industry. This is it.
Yeah, and some of them are radioactive heavy metals. In fact, they're talking about finding metastable 110 silver, which is a radioactive silver isotope, which has a half-life of about 2/3 of a year, in the Pacific, in the plutonium sea off of Japan.
Right.
And there's no, I mean, it's not naturally occurring. It's not like potassium-40. Potassium is naturally occurring, and a certain percentage of it is naturally 40, you know, is the radioactive isotope that is,
Right.
What do I want to say, iodine.
Exactly. Yeah.
131.
Yeah, I 131, exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So, but this is not, silver, the radioactive component never occurs in nature. So this has to be man-made. And they're finding it off of the shore from Fukushima.
Well, I would call it satanically made, because that's more appropriate, because man with at least a portion of a normal conscience would not do this. Unless you're energized by the dark side of the Sith Lords and demonic, transdimensional demonic entities, you wouldn't do this to the human race or the biosphere. This is what I don't want to call it man-made anymore. I want to call it satanically made. Because normal human beings with common sense, decency, and a conscience, even if you're not a Christian, wouldn't do this. This is not the actions of a normal consequential, sentient, rational being. This is evil.
Well, yeah, and they know that they had storage. They had put mixed waste into storage tanks at Hanford in Washington State, upriver on the Columbia, and then these things started emitting gases. Well, the tanks were sealed. These were 55-gallon tanks, and they were sealed, and so they started bulging. And the people were afraid to open them because they said, they were very clear about it. We don't know what radioactive isotopes are in there because we don't know what reactions took place. I mean, this is an unknown area. We don't know what happened over in Fukushima. We don't know how this silver 110 metastable was generated. I mean, they find
one of the problems is, you see, there's radiologically amplified chemical reactions. Most people don't realize the abiotic oil that's inside the Earth, which is a giant nuclear reactor, is a combination of catalytic conversion to make larger biomolecules and oil molecules, etc., hydrocarbons, catalyzed by nuclear isotopes over millions of years. Back in a moment.
Heard what sounded like breaking glass along with accompanying the explosion or immediately before the explosion. There have been sounds that sounds like trumpets actually blowing that seem to be coming from above, and there have also been humming sounds, and these have occurred over, you know, the last 3 or 4 months pretty extensively, and they seem to be increasing at times, then they'll go away for a bit as far as reports.
Let's look at the physics of what sound is, okay? So we'll look at the physics. First is a sound has to occur when you have the production of, killed a couple, well, I think it was almost 300,000.
300,000. I'm sorry, whatever I said, it was wrong.
Yeah, it was
anyway,
a lot.
They said that the Earth rang. In other words, you know, the seismologists could tell that the Earth was ringing, and the seismic waves bounced around. They would come out one side of the Earth, and they get reflected back, and so the Earth was like a bell that was chiming. That earthquake was so big, and it was right at the equator. Now, I haven't had them describe that for the other earthquakes, the one in Chile or the one up in Japan, but they did quite a description of that one that happened in Sumatra on Banda. So you know, when you ring a bell like the Earth is not homogeneous. It's got different layers to it. It's got different densities. It's got caverns. And I think what happened is that some of those caverns, some of those rock formations did get damaged. And now, although it's 10 years later, you have to realize that this is a geologic event. So 10 years is nothing in geologic terms. And then some of those caverns that were weakened by that earthquake, by all that ringing that went on inside the Earth, are now collapsing. And yes, then you could have a boom. You could have a sound generated by that if it were a big enough cavern, and that might explain why we're seeing all these sinkholes too. But yeah, if it were to bounce up to the ionosphere and then bounce back down, because the ionosphere is full of ions, and it might. Well, they bounce radio signals off of it, so I would expect that maybe you could bounce sound signals off of it, and then you would hear a boom or a hiss or a humming or whatever.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Again, ultimately, you're going to have a discharge of plasma, even if there's a collapse of these tunnels or move of tectonic plates. Think of them as the tectonic plates as giant capacitors. And when they reach what's called a piezoelectric slip threshold, which is the basis of the HARP-type technology to trigger earthquakes, this is what I was taught when I had security clearance. Earthquakes are generated when they pump in energy of the tectonic plates at their harmonic frequency of the fault lines. And when they pump in enough energy, they reach what's called the giant waves that create a drop of mu or resistance between the rock surfaces. They reach what's called a piezoelectric slip threshold, and then the rock surfaces slide until the mu or energy is stabilized and the resistance rises in the rocks, and they then lock in. So these sounds are probably caused by deep, if you want to call it, changes inside the planet of the Earth itself, but also discharges in the upper atmosphere. We're seeing weird auroras, and you posted up an interesting article on the auroras too, and I think we should probably talk about.
All right. Well, that is a very interesting article, and I really hadn't thought about it as a problem. These are called co-rotating interaction regions. And when they occur, they normally occur when the solar cycle is at a minimum. And what happens is that these are where it's the transition zone between where slow speed and high speed solar wind streams also are close together. And so they normally only occur during the solar minimum. Well, we know we're at the solar maximum of solar cycle 24, projected for 150 years. You have to understand, everything we know about solar cycles has been extrapolated from data that has been collected over the last 150 years, which is not a long time. We're talking about something that's been in existence for millions of years. So we really know very little about the sun. And we really just know about it since the year 2000, because that's when we started sending out satellites. That's when we got the SOHO satellite up there and other satellites that were observing the sun, because we were putting people into space and we wanted them to be safe and we wanted to keep them out of harm's way, and so we had to know what was happening to the sun. So they've done a lot of these measurements in the last 20 years, and they have discovered that there is a solar wind stream, and that is a stream of charged particles that comes from the sun and all around the sun. So it goes out in a global shape, and it hits the Earth. The Earth is between it and the universe, and some of them come out at a slow speed, and some of them come out at a higher speed. Well, if you've got a slow speed next to a high speed, then you get what these things are called co-rotating interaction region, or a CIR. And they'd only seen them during solar minimums before, but we're seeing them today. So what does that mean? Well, they're thinking that the solar maximum for solar cycle 24 will occur at the end of the year, and instead of the beginning of the year, and maybe even slip into 2014. But I have to tell you, they don't know.
Yeah, no, that's really important. The they don't know part is what's freaking them out, because they know that they have this ISON, which is interesting. We have the sun being celebrated this weekend, the son of the Most High God. But that ISON is coming in November, and that one is going to pass close enough to the sun to cause a major superstorm. The one coming in 2014, which is called Sighting Spring, sounds like a Japanese temple, is going to, apparently they think it's going to hit Mars.
Yes.
If you're going to take just one natural supplement, why not 7-in-1?
You got release of major radioisotopes. So the term calling the Pacific Ocean now aerosols from the buckyballs are going to absorb through their skin, and they're going to absorb it by eating sushi at the 996 sushi bars just in Southern California alone. And they should realize that it is the death of the sea creatures. It's one of the final warnings, if you want to call it. And I believe the second term of Obama is going to lead us very quickly toward a peace treaty in the Middle East. Putin was put there as their guy of the only to be fully integrated into the European system, with the most powerful military machine on Earth and more throwaway than the United States in terms of nuclear power. Well, the current Minister of Defense wants to disarm. So that's where I see it going. It's extremely bad news. Not just bad news, it's extremely bad news. And the only thing that will help is repentance. And starts off this weekend with the repentance and understanding that Jesus Christ came to save us. And that he came to tell us the truth, and the truth will set you free. But people seem to be allergic to the truth, and they want to attack the messengers and even raise questions. But even if you didn't believe us, at least you would consider the questions valid questions. So anybody out there who thinks they know better, prove to us that we're wrong. Prove to us we're wrong. Even if we're just speculating in vague terms or constructs, prove to us that our ideas or even our questions are wrong. Your comment, Mark or Ann?
Well, Dr. Bell, I would comment just very briefly that you just hit the biggest nail right on the head as far as what makes it or breaks it when it comes to any healing that will happen on this planet by God through man before we actually enter into the Great Tribulation here, and that is repentance.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that people, they want to put Dr. Deagle in a box. And I'm just a guy, okay? I'm not necessarily a really good guy or bad guy. But I am fully aware of my potential to do good or evil, and I'm saved by the blood of Jesus and washed in the blood of the Lamb, and I'm saved by grace. And whatever abilities I have, and some of them are pretty remarkable, are given at the feet of the Most High God to serve His people and to tell them the truth. Evil has a face. Evil has a scheme, and the name's changed, but the same technologies of evil have been going on for millennia. And there's a movie that's being announced this week called The Host. And it's based on this thesis that there's aliens that come and they literally live in the host of the bodies. So that all of a sudden they have peace, but then there's a woman who wants to revolt against this host because she's hosting this being inside her. And now there's peace and there's no war and there's nothing going on. Everything is just totally sterilized now. And the problem is what we're dealing with is people are now, as Michelle read that story about the TV in the corner of the room and their children, the wife that became the computer and the children the iPod and the iPhone, etc. We're dealing with a cybernetic world where people don't have a relationship with the Most High God. They don't think repentance is personal. They don't take responsibility for the environment. They don't think they either want to hero worship and think somebody else is going to do it because they're a hero, but I don't want to get involved because it'll be dirty and ugly. And if I get a chance, I'm going to attack the messenger because I don't like the message. It's a very childish, destructive thing, and believing things that are dangerous for all of us is evil. Because when you believe that it's a good idea to take a fire axe to the bottom of the lifeboat, hopefully people will grab your arms before you puncture a hole in the bottom of the lifeboat. But the problem is we have people nowadays that think they're educated or think they're informed and they're Google geniuses and they want to attack the messengers. And I say, not just as Dr. Deagle, but Prophet Deagle, we need to smarten up. We need to smarten up. Now, we need to realize that this is not just a funny Easter egg hunt this weekend. This is recalling literally the incarnation of the creator of the universe as, quote, Son. Not a separate person, but as the incarnation of the God of the universe. To save us, but without a personal relationship, without repentance, and without action, as I say, faith is dead without action, then you have no relationship if you're not standing up for the truth. If you're not asking questions. And if you attack the messengers without considering what we say, you are more desperately evil than those that kill the unborn. Your comments, Ann?
Well, I think on this Easter weekend, we want everyone to know that there is the glory of God.
There's hope, and the hope comes only from the hopeful one. If you think that we can solve these problems, if you think we're clever enough, no. Only with His guidance, only with prayer, face down before the Most High, only with sackcloth and ashes shall we enter a world that will survive the death of the sea lions, the death of our world, the gathering storm.
written law, California law, United States federal law. NRC to enforce. By law, have to have somewhere to put the spent fuel rods. They promised us they would have the spent fuel rods taken care of by 1976, then by 1982, then by 1985, then 1991. It's 2013, you still store them on site.